Now, the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNradio.com.
So you guys may have noticed over the course of the last couple of weeks we hadn't done a whole lot of radio because the way that it worked was if there's a conference finals game on, we would not be on because ESPN Radio was where you could find the conference finals and, oh, by the way, is where you can find the NBA finals, which is a slick way of me telling you that when there are NBA finals games on, I don't have to come to work. Now, we are back here today, and I missed you guys. I really did. I enjoyed talking to you on the radio and everything else. But, see, here's the problem. There hasn't been an NBA Finals game in I don't know how long. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but there ain't nothing going on in the basketball game unless y'all want to talk about some hockey. And if y'all want to talk about some hockey, I suggest you go find somebody else. So, hey, we're going to have to pull off some magic tricks to get this done. And that's going to be cool. We're going to make it happen. I just want to make sure that you guys understand here that while I appreciated the time off for the conference finals, without the conference finals, man, I'm just going to be out here making stuff up. I mean, most of it's going to be true, but, I mean, I'll make some stuff up if I have to. Anyway, I'm not sure if you guys saw the news today, but apparently it is imminent that Cam Newton will sign a fairly significant contract extension to remain the quarterback of the Carolina Panthers from now until who knows. The question, of course, with his contract is the same question as you have in pretty much every contract, which is how guaranteed is that money really? Right? So some guys have contracts that are just, nice and loaded up and guaranteed. And then some of them, I don't want to call it an okie-doke contract, but the Bengals gave Andy Dalton a contract that was very similar to the contract that Colin Kaepernick got, which is one that says we are totally willing to pay you like you're a franchise quarterback if you're a franchise quarterback. But, we're really not sure about you, dude. And to be fair, in both of those cases, that's exactly the way the team should have operated. That's exactly the way that the team should have done it. Miami did the same thing with Ryan Tannehill. I feel like if you have a great idea as to whether or not any of those three quarterbacks is going to turn out to be really good, I want you to start hitting me on them lottery tickets, baby, box and a straight, because you know it all. I don't know how you could do it. Well, actually, no, let me clear that up. I don't know how you could do it with Kaepernick. I don't really know how you could do it with Tannehill. I think we know what Andy Dalton is. He's just there. Anyway, the presumption that I'm making is that Newton's contract is not going to be set up like those guys' contracts. And the reason I don't think that his contract is going to be set up like theirs is he's just a lot better than them. He's done a whole lot more for the team that he quarterbacks than they have. And it should be noted. Now, the Tannehill one is interesting because Tannehill was a first-round pick, but the other two guys were working off those second-round pick contracts and third-round pick contracts. You know what I mean? They were working off that little money sort of contract. No one went in on them as the franchise, like the Panthers have gone in with Newton as the franchise. Like, he's what they're selling. He's what they've got. Now, I know that if you watch a lot of television and listen to a lot of analysis, you hear a wide, I don't want to say it's a wide variance of opinions on Cam Newton, and I said analysis, and I guess that's not really what I'm talking about. A whole lot of y'all just hate that dude. It's been that way since 2010. He is as polarizing a figure as I can think of, especially for a guy that kind of plays off the beaten path. It's not like Newton's playing in New York or anything. But you start talking about Cam Newton, man, people get charged up. And I've never seen people bend over backwards to say that somebody isn't any good in the way that people bend over backwards to do that with Cam Newton. I mean, I have nothing for you on that. Nobody gets it in the way that he gets it. Let me remind you of something right fast, though. Because before the people get mad about the money that Cam's about to get, here's something that you may not have recognized. The year before Newton got there, the Panthers were awful. I mean, just terrible. And they got the number one pick. I mean, that's how they wound up getting him. But I don't think that people really, truly, properly understand just how terrible the Panthers were that year on offense. On offense, in 2010, the Panthers scored 16 offensive touchdowns. 9 passing, 7 rushing. 16 offensive touchdowns. The following year, Cam threw for 21 and ran for 14. Okay, right? I feel like that's a pretty good place to start having the conversation, right? 16 touchdowns as an offense before he got there, 35 of them involving him the following year. Now, what people will tell you about Newton is that year was great as a rookie, and then the league sort of caught up. They won that division, and then last year they were bad. Last year he was not that good, and they won the division, but let's not lie. They were not good. That was not a good football team. The question that I have about Cam that came up last year was, if you are an NFL player and you are reluctant to take painkillers and you don't smoke weed, I don't really understand how it is that you're going to be able to make it through NFL seasons playing at a high level. And you watch Cam last year, and the dude was hurt. Like, that's what it came down to. Like, my biggest question for him really is, if you are going to be the guy that's not taking painkillers, and I don't blame anybody for not taking painkillers. I don't. But it's kind of hard to do that job without it, right? But you squeeze in those 2 years in between, and you look at the career that Cam Newton's had, and you combine that with the teams that have been put around him. I am very curious as to what people reasonably expect that the Panthers should be with him as quarterback. Like, what quarterback are you going to go get that's better than Cam? And that's the question that pretty much every team winds up asking when they have to give a guy a contract extension is, who are we going to find that's better than him? Now, that has given us things like Matthew Stafford making all the money that he has made, Jay Cutler making all the money that he has made, where you look around and you're like, dude, I don't think we're going to be able to do any better than this. So you double down on the guy that you wind up having. Now, there had to be a correction in the market, and the reason there had to be a correction in the market was once you had Joe Flacco making all the money that he had and us knowing in spite of the team success that he has been a part of, Joe Flacco just isn't but so good, everybody had to look up and be like, look, man, we can't be paying y'all all this cash, man. Like we know. We understand. We know you're not that good. You know you're not that good. We're not just about to keep paying quarterbacks like they're better than they are. And, of course, the first guy to really jump on board with that one of them was going to be Mike Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals, who was looking at Andy Dalton like, I wouldn't care if you won 3 Super Bowls. I'm trying to get you as cheap as possible. But I'm pretty sure that Cam Newton is going to be the guy that jumps what seemed like a market correction. Because it's not a correction when Cam gets the guaranteed money. It's not. I raise a serious question. This is just for anybody. I mean, pick a random quarterback. Anybody you want to talk about in the league. Pick good, pick bad. However you want, whoever it is that you want to compare to Cam. Who are you dropping off on the Carolina Panthers that's going to make them any better? And on top of the question of who are you dropping off on the Carolina Panthers that's going to make them any better, you look at the team that they have, and I'm like, when are they going to get better? Because if they couldn't figure out how to put it together when they were getting Cam for the cheap, I don't know what they're going to do once he's hitting their pockets. Like, how does that work? How does that go? I have no idea. I do know this, though. Whole lot of y'all are about to get salty about this one. Like, I'm here to help you out just so you get prepared if you don't realize what the game's going to be and how it's going to wind up going down. When these numbers come out and you start hearing something about Cam Newton getting something in the neighborhood of $40 and $50 million guaranteed, people are going to be mad and they are going to begin to speak illogically. Listen to this. I got somebody in my Twitter mentions right now. Here's his question. Should the Panthers show some restraint and focus on offensive line and receivers? Yeah, they should, but like, not you don't show restraint at the quarterback to do that. Hey, there are a lot of ways that you can decide that you're going to go ahead and save money. Like, that's not the place that you save money. You know what quarterbacks are like, and you're probably not going to believe this, but this is the truth, man. Quarterbacks are like toilet paper. And this is what I mean by that, right? Toilet paper preserves the center of your existence. And, like, you don't realize that that's the center of your existence until you got bad toilet paper, okay? You get that one-ply toilet paper, that school toilet paper. It puts you in touch with really what's important in your life. Now, you can go cheap on toilet paper if you want. You can. Like, that's an option. There are all kinds of toilet papers that you can get in the store. You know what I mean? Hey, you can just ask them to double bag your groceries and make it work, right? Like, there's all kinds of ways that you can save money on toilet paper. But if you do that, it won't be long before you ruin the center of your existence. So, yeah, you're right. You can show restraint, right? You can show restraint, and you can save money on toilet paper so that you can get the ground sirloin instead of the ground chuck. I think you might want to find a different solution to your problem.
Bomani.
So, minding my own business today, sitting around looking on the Twitter machine, and I saw the Vanity Fair cover, and it said, "Call me Caitlin." And it was a picture of a woman who, the last time I had seen her, was a man named Bruce Jenner. I think that's the best way to put that. I have always said on the issue of things related to transgender that people are going to say a lot of ignorant things, but I don't think that conceptually the notion of being transgender is really something that is very well understood or that easily explained. You can make the argument that it's easy to explain because you could do it in a couple of sentences, but we have lived, by and large, lives where the words gender and sex were interchangeable. Like, I didn't realize until very recently that your gender is not necessarily your sex. That was something I just did not understand. So you tell people that someone had a penis but was a woman, and you're asking for a lot of most people. Now, you can stop and you can talk to them and you can explain, and the difficulty that probably comes up in explaining to most people is once you defy that initial thing that they have, they don't know what to do. Like, that's where the wall comes up. That's where it goes. So I don't condone the ignorance that a lot of people have on the issue. I do, however, have a certain understanding of the fact that for a lot of people, we're asking them to get on what is really for them a revolutionary sort of idea. Like, this isn't basic. And I think that a lot of people with certain levels of social sophistication have a tendency to arrogantly chastise those folks who are like, wait, what? Like, that isn't necessarily the coolest way to look at it or the coolest thing to say, but I'm not going to pretend like I don't understand why people don't stop and say, wait, what? Like, I get that part. The part with people that I don't quite understand is just the out-and-out resistance to kind of ride along with the ways that people wish to be treated and to be referred to when it doesn't actually cost you anything. Like, anything at all. So I had people saying, I saw on the social media space, and people will tell you, well, you can't believe, the people on social media, Nah, bruh, I've learned something, is that a whole lot of you are smart enough to know what not to say out loud. There's something to be said for having a window into the people who don't realize what the wrong answers are. Right? But there's a lot of people like, nah, that's Bruce Jenner. I'm going to keep calling him Bruce. I'm not going to call him her or whatever it is. And look, I guess you can do that. I just don't understand why. Like, what do you get from that? Like, what ultimately winds up being accomplished from that rigidity that you have about this? Look, I saw that Vanity Fair cover. That's a woman. All right? Like, I mean, if you're telling me that whoever's in that right there is a woman. And what's funny is that a lot of the people who refuse to look at Caitlyn Jenner as a woman, if Bruce Jenner were simply a gay man they wouldn't have any problem making a comparison between the gay man and a woman. Actually become a woman and, nah, man, we're going to call you a man. Like, you're just basically making the decision in your world that you get to decide what somebody else is going to be. And look, I guess you're allowed to do that in your space, but I think when you listen to it in those terms, you can understand just how ignorant and ridiculous that ultimately is. It's right there. It's right there. Now, one thing I do wonder about this, though, is, Bruce Jenner right now is primarily famous because of his relationship with the Kardashians. Like, that's it. Like, you start asking people about Bruce Jenner, the decathlete, and I would guess that they don't know very much about that. They don't know very much about look, the only reason I really know of Bruce Jenner as a decathlete is because he came on an episode of Silver Spoons once. And inexplicably, I remember that episode of Silver Spoons. And I remembered it in large part because Bruce Jenner came out, and it was a real big deal. And I'm like, who the hell is Bruce Jenner? See, I didn't grasp at the time when I was watching Silver Spoons that Silver Spoons was on reruns at that time. I had no concept or recollection of that fact. So, like, Silver Spoons is going on. It's happening in real time. And they're talking about that dude like he's famous, like, that day. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And they said he won the decathlon. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Wheaties box, whatever. You can go ahead and do that. And now we wind up at this point where it's Bruce Jenner and he's 65 years old. Like, what happens if somebody makes this decision when they're 35 and it's somebody that you actually know? Like, there, I'm curious as to how this goes over and how this is received. Like, right now, I think that what the Bruce Jenner situation really is, a situation, I feel so bad saying that because we're talking about somebody's life, so I apologize for using that term. But what this is really, in all likelihood, is just something that's going to get people familiar with the idea of being transgender and making this transition. Like, this is going to be the one where it's like, this is the first time that people know what's going on. I'm just letting you know, if you're over there mad about this, you're really not going to like the world that's coming, because a lot more things like this are going to happen. A lot more people are going to feel comfortable to live the lives the way that they want to live them. Now, I'm not giving any judgment at this particular moment right now about how they choose to live their lives. I just know that that's how they want to do it. I'm just telling you, man, nobody's going to stop living their life for you. At least I sure as hell hope not. Because the people who do, like, stop living their lives in the name of other people, eventually they start wilding out. Like, one way or another, they start wilding out. You don't want to be in the wrong place at the wrong time when they start wilding out. But I do hope that this is something that gives people a chance. If you don't understand what's going on, just take a second to kind of, like, think about it and figure it out. Because I said today earlier on Twitter, I was like, look, man, don't lose your job because you don't have anything good to say about the Caitlyn Jenner situation. There I go with situation again. The reason I say anything good, I didn't say don't do it if you don't have anything nice to say. Nice to say. I said good to say. Like, you do have to realize that just getting up and saying, hey, you a man, not a woman. Like, that's not anything good to say. I always wonder when we have this public discourse on things like this, like the person who says that, if they really are sitting around and thinking, you know what? I'm going to say something nobody's ever thought about before. He used to be Bruce. I'm going to call him Bruce. Like that, like, great, thank you. Your contribution is really appreciated. Well, that's just how I feel, so I'm going to say it because that's the way that I see it. Now, that's never really been an adequate excuse for explanation for why you need to say something. And that's never been what it is. That's just not good. Like, I don't think a lot of people really have anything good to say about this. And the reason I don't think a lot of people have anything good to say about this is how much good do you really have to say about somebody's decision to live their lives the way that they want to? Like, even the people who I think are, been very supportive of gender, like, they're not really necessarily saying anything good. Like, it's good in the sense that you're promoting something positive, perhaps, and you're trying to, avoid the hatred of the world. Like, good maybe in that sense. But I think at some point we kind of need to look around at the people who are out here and what we're talking about and recognize, man, most people just really have no idea what's going on here. They just don't. And I'm not saying necessarily that that's justifiable. In some cases it's not, and in some cases people don't know simply because they're resistant to something that's a little bit outside of their comfort zone. But I do think we need to do a little bit of a better job of putting people in a position to kind of know what the things are that we're talking about here. Oh, and by the way, some of you guys aren't fooling me. You're not fooling me at all. Some of the maddest people about that Bruce Jenner thing are the ones that saw that cover and were like, yo, man, what's up with Caitlyn? Caitlyn kind of fly. Hey, you didn't tell me that was Bruce. I know y'all out there. You can't fool me.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Bomani.
You see your man Johnny Manziel got in trouble at a golf tournament, threw a bottle at somebody. I mean, not a glass bottle. Like, he didn't throw an old English bottle at anybody, but he did throw what they said was about a 3/4 full bottle of water, the bottle being originally 32 ounces, because some dude was at a golf tournament, and the dude was hassling him and harassing him, they said, and heckling him. And so Manziel threw the bottle at him. Cops got involved. It became a thing, and they let Manziel go. Now, I'm not a mountain out of molehill sort of guy. That's just not me. But I got to say, I have been amazed at how tolerant the rest of you guys have been about this sort of thing. That's been a tad shocking. I want you to hear this. You don't hear this very often coming from a spokesman for the police. The only criminal offense that occurred was somebody that was in Johnny's group that pushed the 18-year-old. It was not Johnny. That's misinformation that's out there, and he didn't want to press charges. It was a bunch of nothing. Okay, there you go. I'm just saying the cops ain't always that nice to everybody. They're just not. Johnny threw a water bottle toward this young man. It did not hit him. It hit a wall behind him. There's a quote online that said the 19-year-old said, "Nice throw." I think that kind of escalated things further. At that point, the friend pushed the 18-year-old. Hey, man, normally the cops don't talk about people getting pushed at golf tournaments as nothing. Like, let me go in there pushing people around. I don't care if somebody threw a rock at me. Ain't nobody just taking it this easy. That's it. Now, apparently this kid had been asking Manziel for about 2 hours for an autograph, and Manziel said no, and that's when the thing turned up. And one thing I am about is athletes making it clear that, look, you don't own them. So this idea that you run up on him and he has to give you an autograph and you keep asking and you keep asking and you keep asking, no. I don't blame Manziel for wanting to throw something at the dude. I blame Manziel for throwing something at the dude. Like, those are two different things. You can't really do that. Like, generally speaking, you just can't do that. Regardless of who you happen to be, generally speaking, you cannot do that. You just can't. You can't be out here throwing stuff at people. Because here's the thing that gets lost in this. So let's say that Manziel throws that at the dude, and he's throwing it at a different kind of dude, if you know what I mean. I mean somebody that'll come back and now all of a sudden that really starts to fight. Like, it can't be that. And generally speaking, where as far as public bad behavior goes, throwing a bottle isn't that big of a deal. But as we talked about with many people, that is something that the quarterback cannot do. Like the concerns that people had about Jameis Winston and the concerns that people had about Johnny Manziel coming into the league as it related to their behavior, those concerns wouldn't be the same if they played any other position. The quarterback is supposed to roll in a different way. Like, that's how that goes. You can't do this and you can't be this if you're Johnny Manziel. And I think that Manziel is in a bit of a difficult place because he wound up becoming a lot more famous than I think anybody ever thought he would when this whole thing got started. Then he got to that point, and he enjoyed the being famous. He enjoyed the recognition. And I don't blame him for enjoying the recognition. If I were his age in that same place, I would enjoy the recognition. But while enjoying the recognition, there was a cost to it. There's the other side of it. It's the people that are messing with you for no good reason when you go out to a golf tournament, right? It's those things that come with it. It's just kind of hard to have it both ways. It's hard to be out and do the things that he wants to do and avoid these sorts of situations. So what do you do if you're Johnny Manziel in this case? His game plan has always been to defiantly keep on living the life that he wants to live. And I don't blame him. It's just probably not going to work. So I'm not saying that Manziel has to go to, can't go to a golf tournament. Of course he could go to a golf tournament. I mean, you would think if he could go any place that he could go to a golf tournament. But the reality is, if some guy is coming up and is hassling him about an autograph, and it keeps happening, and it keeps happening, and it keeps happening, and it gets to a point where you're thinking about throwing a water bottle at him, if you're Johnny Manziel at this point, you got to call security. Or you have to go home. But you can't throw the bottle at him. You can't. And I hate to be the maturity police. And the big reason I hate to be the maturity police is that it makes me feel so old. So old, right? Like, I don't ever want to be, oh my gosh, I feel so old about that. But I've been surprised at how many people have looked at this thing with Manziel as anything other than a reason to question maturity. Like, how could it not be? I had people coming at me today, and their thing was the only reason we're talking about this is because he's Johnny Manziel. Yes and no, right? Yes and no. And the reason I say yes and no is we probably don't find out this happens unless it's Manziel. So if it's Ryan Fitzpatrick, for example, we don't find out that this happens. No chance. But that's a function of Ryan Fitzpatrick not being famous. Now, let's put this on a list with, like, other famous quarterbacks or other famous people, and I think this goes a little bit differently. Now, maybe that person winds up getting the same benefit of the doubt that Manziel does. Maybe. I guess it kind of depends, right? Like, maybe this is one of those where it all depends on whether you like the person that you're talking about. So you tell me, if Cam Newton throws that bottle at somebody, you think it's all good? If Ben Roethlisberger throws that bottle at somebody, you think it's all good? Jameis Winston, you think it's all good? Because I don't. Joe Flacco probably slides. Russell Wilson, the other guy must have done something. I'm just surprised that it looks as though Manziel is being put in the other guy must have done something boat as opposed to the guy who's gotten in trouble boat. It's a fairly charmed existence that he leads, even though it hasn't actually been that charmed. I wish the best for Manziel, though. I rooted for Manziel from the moment I realized that he was a lot more fun than these other cats. Like, I want good things to happen for him. I don't think that's going to happen for him as an NFL quarterback, but I sure would like for it to happen. But my desire to like for good things to happen to Johnny Manziel doesn't mean we got to get out here and start lying about stuff and act like we don't peep game on what's going on. Like, he, for reasons that I don't necessarily understand, in ways good and bad, plays on a different set of rules. It's just rare that those two sets of rules actually come together in the same man. You just don't see it very much.
Bomani.
I understand that a lot of you guys out there take a great deal of pride in talking about how much you don't like soccer. I've always found it a little bit weird how passionate people are in telling people what they don't like. But soccer brings it out in a very interesting way because, soccer somehow manages to challenge people's patriotism almost. They just feel like it's un-American to watch soccer. I mean, if that's what you're about, that's fine. But let me tell you what is very, very American. Stealing. I think we'd all agree upon that stealing has been a hallmark of American life. And so while I am a World Cup soccer watcher, I really don't go beyond that. I am totally fascinated by this FIFA story because, man, this is just blatant, outright theft. Like, the numbers that are being thrown around and the ridiculous things that people are doing, this is like rap in the late 90s. The dude, what's his name, Blazer, had an apartment in the Trump Tower in New York exclusively for his cats. Mike Tyson didn't even buy a house for his tiger, and that's a tiger. A tiger. Like, did the cats have bedrooms? Like, did they have beds? You know? Like, they was out here balling, man. So, check out the new part of the story. So, this story involves two dudes right now of note. One guy's name is Jack Warner, and the other guy's name is Jerome. Except, just to help you visualize it and to understand how great this story is, we got a guy named Jack Warner and we got a guy named Jerome, but the dude you're picturing as Jack Warner looks more like Jerome, and the dude you're picturing as Jerome, that's Jack Warner, right? So Jerome is Jerome Valk, or Valky, I don't know how to say it. Anyway, he's the Secretary General of FIFA, and this is a story I'm reading off ESPN.com. So Jerome allegedly made $10 million of illegal payments. And this is how much stealing was going on with FIFA. This is how much was going on. So the dude, Jack Warner, was voting for where the World Cup would go. And he was supposed to get $10 million from South Africa's Soccer Federation to get his vote. But they couldn't afford it, or they didn't have the money, right? So since they didn't come up with the money, FIFA then said, all right, if somebody's got to pay this $10 million to Jack, then I guess we'll be the ones to pay this $10 million to Jack. So what does that mean, right? Now, keeping in mind this is all alleged, according to the New York Times, but what does that mean? That means that FIFA, for whatever reason, wanted the World Cup in South Africa. Except here's this dude now who will only help if he gets $10 million, and South Africa isn't coming off the $10 million. So FIFA just says, I guess we'll have to do it ourselves. So the guy Jerome then, as it's put in the paperwork, quote, caused, unquote, $10 million to be transferred from FIFA to Jack Warner so that Jack Warner would get this vote. Now, some of you may have been paying attention to this and have heard the name Jack Warner. Jack Warner was made famous this weekend by John Oliver when Jack Warner was trying to use a newspaper article to defend himself, right? And here's what Jack Warner did, just so you again appreciate the greatness of the FIFA scandal. So Jack Warner, who once again looks more like Jerome than the actual Jerome that is involved in this story, according to our general understanding in this country of who Jerome is, anyway, he holds up this newspaper article that he's printed off the internet, and he says, then I look to see that FIFA has frantically announced 2015, this year, the World Cup beginning in May 27th. If FIFA is so bad, why is it that the United States wants to keep the FIFA World Cup? Now, he raises a somewhat interesting question, because I do think the federal government got involved in this in large part because the United States did not get the World Cup in 2022. So, yeah, there's something to the United States wanting the World Cup. But, sir, you are not going to be able to explain to the world that the United States wants the World Cup and be taken seriously when you hold up a newspaper printout, and that newspaper is called The Onion. The Onion. He held up something from The Onion as a newspaper article. Right. Right. That's where we're at with FIFA. Now, can I tell you my dilemma with FIFA? Can I tell you the dilemma that I've now reached as it relates to FIFA? So, your man Sepp Blatter. Everybody says that Sepp Blatter is so evil. But I have a peculiar respect for shamelessness, right? Like, if you're willing to be that guy, I have a peculiar respect for that. Now, Sepp Blatter, people were wondering if Sepp Blatter was going to get elected at the FIFA Congress last week, and he did wind up being elected, and he gave a speech to celebrate his election, and here is a part of his speech.
I like you. You brought me again into the FIFA. I stay with you. you have voted for me. All those they have voted for the Prince Ali. I congratulate you. It's a good candidate. But I'm now the president of everybody. So I'm the president of everybody.
I am the president of everybody. Look, I understand the point that he was making. He was saying that even if you didn't vote for me, I'm still your president. That doesn't change the fact that he said to everyone, I am the president of everybody. Now you tell me, how am I supposed to root against a man that can get in front of everybody and do that? How am I supposed to do that? How can you expect me to now root against somebody who would have the audacity, with a federal indictment staring him down? I am the president of everybody. Let me tell you some more this dude said. Yeah, this happened on Friday, and yeah, some of you have probably heard it, but this stuff won't ever stop being funny. It's going to be more than 3 or 4 days before this stops being funny. This man says, let me get this right here. We need in this committee women. We need ladies. This is the same man who said that a way to increase the popularity of the Women's World Cup is to have them play in shorter shorts because the ladies playing soccer are pretty. He says, for the next 4 years, I will be in command of this boat called FIFA. We will bring it back offshore. Maybe that's one of those things where we got a language barrier, but I don't quite. Nah. I don't get it. Also, this man, while he is being investigated by the federal government, made a reference to Ocean's 11 in his speech. So while you and your organization are being accused of a spectacular level of graft, you are going to make references to a heist. Like FIFA, as some of you guys know, I did a little political science study at graduate school, and I did I looked at a lot of stuff from African governments, post-colonialism. And the reason that I bring that up is in studying that, you just find out about amazing levels of graft with a lot of those countries. And no need to get into why that is the case, but just spectacular levels of theft. So in what is now the Democratic Republic of the Congo, what was once Zaire, when Mobutu was in charge there, it was written down that anybody who worked for the government could tax any citizen at any time for any reason. Like if you worked for the government, you could just go hit somebody up for cash at any time. Basically what I'm telling you is FIFA operates in a way that is similar to Mobutu's Congo. Yeah. Think about what that means.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt. Frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
All guests join us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Like our next guest, he's a former executive with the Phoenix Suns, and he came to Miami last week and didn't even holler at your boy, Amin El Hassan. What's going on with that?
Hey, man, I'm a busy guy. I got a lot of constituents down in the 305. I have to see different folks this time around. Hey, it can't always be funny games every time I'm down there.
Yeah, I see how it is. We're talking to Amin El Hassan. Hey, man, lots of things going on in the coaching ranks. What did you think about the way the Bulls handled things with Tom Thibodeau?
I mean, this is what I've said, and I've held fast with this. It's your decision, Jerry Reinsdorf. If you don't want a man coaching your team, regardless of whether he did a great job, an awful job, whatever it is, it's your team. You can get rid of the guy. You can fire him. But the whole, trying to dangle his employment in front of him by, dallying with the idea of let's wait until all the jobs are filled up before we fire him. And then when you finally do fire him, you have a press release that's just complete nonsense, slander, and just bad-mouthing the guy out the door. The only person who gets hurt by all that is the Chicago Bulls organization. It's Jerry Reinsdorf, John Paxson, and Gar Forman. They're the ones that come out looking like bad guys. Even if they were right about some of the things that they asserted about Tibbs.
Well, let me ask you this, because I think they had one thing they had to do after that, though. They did have to explain it. You're firing a guy with the record that he had. You had to explain why in the world that was. Is there any way to do that and not look bad?
Absolutely. You say, we thank Coach Tibbs for the time he gave us. We just felt like for this team to achieve its full potential, we needed to make a change right here. It's literally a mirror image of what happened a year ago with Golden State and Mark Jackson. Guy won 51 games and got him to 7th game despite losing their starting center in those playoffs. From a basketball standpoint, you could have made the argument that Mark Jackson should have kept his job, but they knew that for this thing to work going forward, because there was a rift between front office and coaching staff, that needed to be fixed, and the only way that could be fixed was with a new coaching staff. And so they did that move. They didn't badmouth Mark. They didn't, or at least not publicly, not officially. They moved on, and everyone kind of moved on from the incident. With Chicago, this idea that you have to kind of create this laundry list of things that are wrong with Tibbs and how he's not trustworthy and all this kind of stuff, it doesn't help anybody, because at the end of the day, people are going to look at that and they're going to look at Tibbs and they're going to side with the guy who walked away with people saying bad things about him. You look at Tibbs' statement, thank you, Jerry Reinsdorf, for the opportunity, and best of luck to you. He comes away taking the higher road. He comes away looking like the nicer guy.
The Warriors, they just waited until the next season to start trashing Mark Jackson. They waited a little time. They gave a little time for the body to get cold.
Like I said, when at the time, that's when everyone's paying attention. Afterwards, nobody cares if Andrew Bogut's dropping little nuggets here and there. If Harrison Barnes is dropping lines in, nobody really cares about that.
All right, we're talking to Amin Elhassan, and you mentioned the Warriors. Their lead assistant is a guy you know, Alvin Gentry, who was the head coach of the Phoenix Suns and had a couple of stops before. He's gotten a really interesting job. He got the Pelicans job, so he gets to work with Anthony Davis. What do you think about Gentry as a head man?
Wow. Phenomenal leader. I think he checks a lot of boxes. A lot of people are calling him an offensive coach. I call him an all-around coach. First and foremost in our game, I think you have to have a relationship with your players. You have to have the pulse of that locker room, and you have to be able to coach not just your superstars, but everyone down the line to the 15th man on the roster. Alvin does a remarkable job of that. He is probably the best person I've ever met in my entire life. He can spend 5 minutes with you, and within those 5 minutes, he'll find some commonality, whether it's a favorite TV show, a favorite movie, a favorite musical artist, a favorite food, something that he shares with you and can talk to you in depth about. And I think Alvin does a remarkable job of that. Beyond that, when we're just talking about X's and O's, again, great offensive mind, great ability to draw plays on the fly right there. He was one of the best ATO coaches when he was in Phoenix. Those are plays that are drawn up after timeout. Defensively, I feel like he gets a bad rap because we didn't give him the good enough personnel defensively to craft an elite defense. But again, the thing I always point to is the guy was a lead assistant with the Clippers last year, which was the top 7 defense, I believe. A lead assistant with the Warriors this year, the number 1 defense in the league. Do you really think every time they went over defense in coaching meetings, in practice, and during games, during adjustments, Alvin put his fingers in his ears, closed his eyes, said, la, 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 defense, I don't pay attention, la, 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 la. That's not a very realistic way to think about him. Obviously, even if the defense was a deficiency, he spent a lot of time around 2 of the better defenses we've had over the last 2 years.
Well, what would you say to people who say that he's coached NBA teams in part of 12 seasons as a head coach, but only been in the playoffs twice?
I think, again, we got to look at the context. He was an interim coach in Miami. He took over for a fired guy on a team that wasn't that removed from expansion and took him to the end of the year. At the end of the year, Pat Riley comes in. He goes to Detroit. He's hired as the interim coach at first to take over after Doug Collins leaves, and then eventually gets that team to the playoffs. He took over the Clippers when, by the way, the Clippers were at the height of their Clipperdom, not wanting to pay players, not wanting to pay coaches. Their GM was Elgin Baylor. Their owner was Donald Sterling. It was as bad as it got in Clippertown, and he got them to almost 500. The way I always look at this is if my 4-year-old plays against Michael Jordan and loses 21-5 in a game of one-on-one, are we going to say, yo, you got blown out, or are we going to marvel, you got 5 points against Michael Jordan? It's pretty good. But I say about Alvin with the Clippers. And then his final stop, Phoenix, his first year was an interim year. We won 47 games and missed the playoffs in a ridiculously tough West. His second year, we go to the conference finals. We lose Amari Stoudemire. We go 500 the next year. We're about 500 the year after that. And then they get rid of Steve Nash and Grant Hill and all those guys to replace him with Michael Beasley. Of course he doesn't make the playoffs in those scenarios.
I've been talking to Amin Al-Hassan. I was just waiting for the Michael Beasley part to come up. I just had a feeling that you can't get through something like this without talking about Michael Beasley. Last question for you. What do you think about the situation the Heat's got with Dwayne Wade, where Dwayne Wade wants them to pay what they owe, and they're looking at Dwayne Wade like, I ain't tell you to do that?
Hey, man, I was on Levitard the day that news broke, the moment that news broke, and to see the crushed look in Mike Ryan's eyes, and to see Stugotz proudly proclaim, good riddance, as he's out the door. That was an experience that I wouldn't want to have had anywhere else but on that set. But here's the thing. Dwayne Wade has a player option that he has to decide whether he's going to pick up or decline by June 30th. The only way you know whether you can get more money elsewhere on the market is if you create a market. How do you create a market? You got to talk about it. You got to make some noise. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. And right now, D-Wade is trying to get some oil.
All right, Amin Al-Hassan, ESPN's NBA insider. Holler at me next time you come to town, man. Is that too much to ask, man? Can't holler at your boy. Pablo hollers when he comes to town.
Well, Pablo's not as well connected as I am, but next time you're definitely on the schedule. You were definitely on the schedule.
Oh, okay. I'm on the schedule. You've been calling me country and all this other stuff, too. I got to say, like, if you were not such a good radio guest, our relationship would have a completely different tenor.
I appreciate it.
You take it easy, man.
All right, Bo.
Bomani.
I understand that what I'm about to say next may sound like I'm stunting, and part of that is because I'm stunting, but like I'm stunting in a way to get to a larger point. So hopefully you will tolerate the initial stunting that will take place. And if you don't like the initial stunting that's going to take place, I'm going to keep on stunting. Anyway, you may have been in your local newsstand this weekend and had a chance to see the New York Times Magazine. Someone over there was silly enough to decide that they wanted to do a question and answer with me. They put it on the back page of the magazine and everything. They're about to mail me some copies of it. I'm about to send a couple to my parents. I'm going to frame one. Whole nine, right? Anyway, I mentioned that because in the interview, I said something on the radio last year about Donald Sterling when that all happened, about how we were being stupid about race for so long and we don't care about things that matter. And so Sterling was a rampant housing discriminator. We said nothing about that, but we catch him saying he doesn't want Magic Johnson to come to basketball games, and now all of a sudden we got a problem. And the gentleman who did the interview asked me, have we learned anything from the Donald Sterling situation? I said, of course not. Like, we still don't do anything that really matters. Like, we still have the same dumb, silly conversations as they relate to race. When we talk about race with things like hiring and money and stuff like that, we still don't want to talk about that. When we talk about the, like, varying perceptions of people based on things that have no basis, we still get uncomfortable talking about that. We just know what the wrong words are, and we jump on those. So, like, as long as it's easy and nobody has to think about it, it's no big deal. Nothing that makes anybody actually confront anything. No. We still don't do that. And I mentioned that because we had a story pop up at the end of last week that made me look up. It didn't make me laugh because the story itself was really kind of foul, but it did kind of make me laugh at people. The Falcons had, I wasn't about to say have, and it is not have, they had a linebacker named Prince Shembo. Prince Shembo went to Notre Dame. He's a mid-round pick. And, well, Prince Shembo caught a charge after he killed his now ex-girlfriend's dog. Yeah, he said he kicked the dog once. The dog had a laundry list of injuries. Like, it was terrible. Whatever happened to that dog was absolutely awful. There's no other way to put it. So he gets arrested. He said he didn't mean to kill the dog. Okay. So he said he didn't mean to kill the dog. The Falcons, If there's any team that really can't let you stick around after you've done something to dogs, it is, in fact, the Atlanta Falcons. Like, the Falcons went and got all that money back from Michael Vick. Now, granted, that was much a large-scale sort of situation. But if there's a team that has to stay consistent in the way that it handles people doing bad things to dogs, it's going to be the Falcons. So the Falcons released them. And I saw all this stuff came up with people just, I had a lawyer once tell me. He said that the joke in the federal courthouse always is, you might have a chance if you kill a person, but if you kill a dog, you might as well not even show up. Y'all love dogs. So you got the dog, you might as well not show up if you've done something to a dog. And that's what happened with Prince Shimbo. And you don't really have to explain to me your decision to release somebody after catching a charge like he did, especially after he copped to what happened, especially if it's a fair to middling player. Like, you don't have to explain that to me. I don't think that requires a real level of justification. Like the Falcons don't have to come out here and talk about protecting the rights of labor or anything like that. Nah. That'll get you going. I get it. I'm right there. The thing is, you know who Prince Shimbo is, right? Now, I say that because I remember when the Michael Vick thing went down and people were talking about the dog fighting, and I thought that the rhetoric that was around Michael Vick and the dog fighting case, it just got to be so hot-takey, right? Like, there were so many reasonable and rational things to say, and people just went way too far. So then when people started going too far, they started coming back the other side about, hey, we're just talking about some dogs, like ignoring the whole criminal conspiracy element. But you wound up, when you got to the end of it and you got to the bottom of the thing with Vic and the dogs, once it got to be so much, you had people start raising the question as to whether or not people care more about dogs than people. And I don't know if that was really the concern to be had, but that came up. But another thing that came up is something that there's some legitimacy to, which was that people were making the argument that the harm that Vic was willing to cause dogs is something that you see in sociopaths and perhaps an indicator of a much darker man and a much larger set of problems. And like, when people said that surrounding the Vic thing, it wasn't that I didn't give that credence. It was that I thought it missed the point of what was really going on at that time. Like, there really wasn't a need to demonize Michael Vick beyond what he did was enough. Like, there was no need to take it to the point of saying that he was irredeemable. Like, I thought that was going too far. Now, with Prince Shimbo, his name was caught up in the situation with Lizzie Seberg in Notre Dame. I think she was a student at Lafayette College, and she alleged that Prince Shimbo raped her, and there were many questions as to whether or not Notre Dame did his due diligence in the inquiry, and the young lady wound up killing herself. I mean, it became one of those stories that was big if you knew about it, but somehow didn't really get that big. Like, this happened pre-Jameis Winston. So this happened before people found Jesus, if you will, about sexual assault. The Falcons still drafted him when they drafted him. They still did. Now, we hear all the time about this thorough vetting process of NFL security and all the research that they do and everything else. We hear that. And then we find out things like the situation with Frank Clark in Seattle, the player from Michigan that they took who had been accused of beating up his girlfriend, and the Seahawks said they did this thorough investigation, and then you find out they didn't really do a thorough investigation. They just called a couple of people. Right? Somehow, Prince Shimbo kills a dog, like with his own hands, feet, whatever he used. He killed a dog himself. Like, it's not like he took the dog out back and shot it. Like, he killed it himself, okay? When people have found it convenient, they've tied something like that to the potential that you're dealing with a sociopath. Okay. I didn't hear a single person raise the question to anyone of consequence of the Falcons to say, You know, Prince Shimbo was tied to a sexual assault allegation that resulted in a young lady committing suicide. Now, of course, we don't know if her suicide was tied to being sexually assaulted because we never found out exactly what happened there. But what kind of vetting process did you have? Like, the dude you took who seemed to have a bit of a red flag, he just killed a dog. Like, did you have any idea this sort of thing might happen? And I'm not saying that, like, to say that they should have been able to tell the future. But I do think it's fair, given that we have come to Jesus on these things of violence against women, that would be a question that somebody would ask. Or do, like, these sexual assault allegations and these violence allegations, like, only matter after the thing that made you realize it was a sort of issue and everybody else just got grandfathered in? Like, is that how it works? Because I guarantee you this. If Jameis Winston goes out and kills a dog tomorrow, we're going to tie it to an allegation that was never substantiated. Right? We're going to do that. Jameis Winston get caught going 80 and a 55, and we're going to tie it to that. We all agree there. So, like, how does nobody have to answer for this one? And you can make the argument that the dude's not that famous, but we got not that famous people getting caught up with these things whose names stay in all the time. Like, Ray McDonald was not that famous. I don't know what Ray McDonald looks like. Do you? It's not like he was some big star that everybody knew about. But these things came up. Like, just peep game on how we really only do this when it's convenient. We do it when it's convenient. We do it when it's easy. And then we try to pass it off as though we have a great care for these issues. But we really don't. And if anything gave you a reaffirmation of the fact that people seem to care a little bit more about dogs than people, you got a guy who did something to a dog and was alleged to have done something to a person. And you've heard a lot less outrage about what happened with the person, allegedly, than what happened with the dog. Like, it's right there. If I'm wrong here, you let me know, because it's really difficult to not feel as though it sounds like you guys care a lot more about dogs than you do about women. That wouldn't make me feel good.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Weeknights from 9 to 11 Eastern or on demand at ESPNradio.com.